What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 3 Sleeper Picks. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to give you some of my top DFS Sleeper Picks, super low priced and low ownership players that could crush value this week and give your lineup an advantage over the field. These are risky plays, meant for large tournaments only. Don't go all in on any of these guys. They are high risk, high reward picks. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NFL Week 3. Let's take a look at some of my sleeper picks here. So let's start off at the quarterback position. I like Matthew Stafford from the Detroit Lions playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing quarterbacks. But Matthew Stafford has averaged 17.2 fantasy points per game on the season. He's getting an average of 3 rush attempts per game. He scored 17 fantasy points in each game in the first 2 weeks of the season. He's going to be about 4% owned here. He's projected at 18.5 fantasy points here in Week 3. He's $6,300 DraftKings salary and $1,000 more on FanDuel. I like this pick as a sleeper pick because Vegas thinks there's going to be 56 points scored in this game, and they have the Detroit Lions trailing by 5.5. So it should be a passing game script for Matthew Stafford. They're probably going to have to abandon the run early. The Arizona Cardinals have a great offense. They're going to put points on the board, forcing Matthew Stafford to throw the ball a ton throughout the game. And he can have a 300-yard, 3-touchdown game. He also gets his number 1 wide receiver back this week, Kenny Golladay. So he's got the weapons. So I like Matthew Stafford here versus the Arizona Cardinals. One more deep sleeper at the quarterback position here. Take a look at Teddy Bridgewater from the Carolina Panthers playing the LA Chargers, who have a good defense overall, but they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Teddy Bridgewater has averaged 17 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 2 rush attempts per game. He's not even going to be 1% owned here. So super deep sleeper pick here. And he's projected at 16.5 fantasy points here in Week 3. He's $5,200 DraftKings salary and $1,500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43.5 points scored in this game, with the Carolina Panthers trailing by 6.5. So without Christian McCaffrey, they're going to have to lean on Teddy Bridgewater. They're going to be trailing in this game, and he's got a good matchup here. He's super low salary, so he allows you to stack your running back and wide receiver position. So I like Teddy Bridgewater here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. I like Mike Davis from the Carolina Panthers playing the LA Chargers, who have a good defense overall, and although they've been good versus opposing running backs, Mike Davis has averaged 7.8 fantasy points per game in the season, but really, he only played last game after Christian McCaffrey went down, and he scored 16 fantasy points off of 1 rush attempt and 8 pass targets. He's only going to be about 3% owned here, and I like those pass targets. So even though they probably won't be running the ball, if he's going to get 8 pass targets this game, I think that makes him a fantastic sleeper pick here. He's projected at 13.3 fantasy points here in Week 3. He's $5,100 DraftKings salary and $900 more on FanDuel. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 43.5 points scored in this game, with the Carolina Panthers trailing by 6.5. And normally, if he was just a running back, I wouldn't consider Mike Davis here because I don't think the Panthers are going to be running the ball much. But with those 8 pass targets last week, That means he could be involved in the passing game as the Carolina Panthers are playing from behind. So I like Mike Davis here versus the LA Chargers. Okay, another sleeper pick for you at the running back position. I like David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the 12th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. David Montgomery has averaged 15.1 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 14.5 rush attempts per game and 3 pass targets per game. He scored 22 fantasy points last week off of 16 rush attempts and 3 pass targets, and he's only going to be about 2% owned here. He's on the field for 49% of the snaps. He touches the ball 55% of that time. He's projected at 12.1 fantasy points here in week 3. He's $5,700 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47 points scored in this game, and they have the Bears just trailing by 3. So a pretty close competitive game, a high-scoring game. He's got a bunch of touches the first 2 weeks of the season. He's got a great matchup here. So I like David Montgomery here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My sleeper pick for week 3 at the wide receiver position is Tyler Boyd from the Cincinnati Bengals playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who have the 10th worst defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing wide receivers, Tyler Boyd has averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.5 pass targets per game. He's only going to be about 3% owned here, and he's on the field for 83% of the snaps, touching the ball 10% of that time. He scored 20 fantasy points last week off of 8 pass targets. He's projected at 13.9 fantasy points here in week 3. He's $5,900 DraftKings salary and $100 less on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 47.5 points scored in this game, with the Cincinnati Bengals trailing by 4.5. So we got a passing game script. AJ Green is taking the top cover man, leaving Tyler Boyd open for the long bombs. So I like Tyler Boyd here versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, now this ownership is really low, and I understand why, but I want you to take a look at Keenan Allen from the LA Chargers playing the Carolina Panthers, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing wide receivers. Keenan Allen has averaged 12.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9 pass targets per game. He scored 17 fantasy points last week off of 10 pass targets. He's only going to be about 2% owned here, on the field for 96% of the snaps, touches the ball 12% of that time. He's projected at 15.1 fantasy points here in week 3, and he's only $6,100 DraftKings salary and $1,000 more on FanDuel. Now, the reason for the low ownership here is because without Christian McCaffrey, the Carolina Panthers most likely are going to be trailing in this game, so the Chargers most likely playing with a lead. So a guy like Austin Eckler is probably a really good play for the Chargers, but they're going to score their points somehow. And Keenan Allen, if he gets 8 to 10 pass targets, he could rack up 20 plus fantasy points here while they're building their lead. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43.5 points scored in this game, and they do have the Chargers only ahead by 6.5. So not a blowout score there, just ahead by a touchdown. So I like Keenan Allen here versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, let's take a look at the tight end position. I like Jordan Reed from the San Francisco 49ers playing the New York Giants. Kittle has been ruled out. That's why we're considering Jordan Reed here. He's averaged 13.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 pass targets per game. He scored 24 fantasy points last week off of 8 pass targets. He's only going to be about 2% owned here. And the San Francisco 49ers, they got injuries all over the place. Kittle, Mostert, they're just riddled with injuries on this team. So Jordan Reed could get 8-10 pass targets once again. If he finds the end zone, I don't expect him to put up another 24 fantasy points, but he is projected at 10.4 fantasy points here in week 3, and he's only 4,000 DraftKings salary and 1,300 more on FanDuel. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 42.5 points scored in this game, with the 49ers only favored by 3. So a close, competitive game. This guy could get a lot of work here today. So I like Jordan Reed here versus the New York Giants. Okay, and on the other side of the ball in that same game, I think this guy's going under the radar. I like Evan Ingram from the New York Giants playing the San Francisco 49ers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing tight ends. Evan Ingram has only averaged 7.7 fantasy points per game on the season, but he's getting an average of 7.5 pass targets per game. He scored 13 fantasy points last week off of 8 pass targets, and he's only going to be about 2% owned here. On the field for 95% of the snaps, touching the ball 12% of that time, projected at 11.4 fantasy points here in week 3. He's 5,000 DraftKings salary and 900 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 42.5 points scored in this game, with the Giants trailing by 3. So a passing game script for the Giants, and they got injuries as well. Saquon Barkley is out, so Evan Ingram could get a ton of targets this game. If he can catch the ball and find the end zone, he could be a big-time tight end play here this week. So I like Evan Ingram here versus the San Francisco 49ers. If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.